He said nothing as they mocked him, accused him, and sentenced him. But with one phone call, everything changed. What kind of man can shake a courtroom without raising his voice? If that question stirs you, you're exactly where you need to be. Let me take you back to the moment he entered that courtroom alone, misjudged, underestimated, and carrying a truth no one saw coming. The door opened with the low creak of aged wood and a hush of anticipation. A few heads turned, most didn't. Men like him rarely drew notice anymore, but he walked in anyway, slow and steady, not hesitant, but purposeful, as if time itself yielded to him, and no one in that courtroom could rush it. His name was James Henry, 78 years old. Though his frame still held the solidity of a man who'd carried burdens heavier than stone, he wore a navy flannel shirt, pressed but worn, and pants faded by countless seasons. His boots, cracked at the seams yet polished with care, spoke of a man who met the world with unwavering pride. In his weathered hand, he held a felt hat, soft and creased from years of use, cradled like a keepsake, not for show, but for memory. As he reached the defense table, whispers began, subtle, insidious. Another drifter. Here we go. Why waste court time? James Henry didn't react. He'd heard it before in diners, at city halls, at doors he'd once crafted but was no longer welcome through. He set his hat on the table, folded his hands with quiet reverence, and fixed his gaze straight ahead, not at the judge, not at the ceiling, but steady, unyielding. The docket listed his offense: unlawful occupation of condemned property. The court saw a violation. They didn't see the truth. He'd spent less than an hour on the porch of the house he'd built with his own hands, where his wife once hummed their son to sleep, where he repainted the trim every spring until arthritis made ladders too risky. It was where he last held her hand as she faded. On paper, the porch wasn't his anymore. But the land remembered, and so did he. James Henry brought no lawyer, no rallying cause. He came alone, not because no one would stand with him, but because he chose to bear this moment himself. He didn't lower his eyes when Judge Arthur Coleman entered the courtroom. He didn't shift when his name was called. He'd been judged before in grander rooms for lesser reasons. This time, he wasn't here to defend himself. He was here to test whether the system could still meet his gaze. What no one knew was that James Henry, the man they barely noticed, held the blueprint for what justice was meant to be. Judge Coleman adjusted his robes with the mechanical stiffness of a man long past caring. He opened the case file with a careless flick, as if he'd seen it all. Henry, James, 78, charged with unlawful occupation of city property, he droned, smirking. Another case, same story. His voice wasn't cruel, it was worse. Bored. Boredom strips a man to less than nothing. Let me guess, the judge said. Not looking up, no fixed address, no counsel, no study work in years, no respect for the law you keep breaking. James didn't blink. At the clerk's desk, Emma Larson paused. Something in the judge's tone made her glance at the defense table. There sat James Henry, and a faint memory stirred, of a younger man in a city council room, sleeves rolled up, gesturing proudly at blueprints. She shook her head. No, it can't be. Yet, she kept looking. Judge Coleman grunted. We don't have time, Mr. Henry. This docket's full of people who think property rights are emotions. He finally looked up, narrowing his eyes, but he didn't see a builder or a veteran. He saw what he chose to see, an old black man, weary, alone, on the wrong side of the law. Let me be clear, Coleman said, leaning forward. The city owes you nothing. Memories aren't deeds. The courtroom stayed silent, a silence that felt like consent. No one objected, except in the way James Henry sat, not defeated, but rooted, his presence a quiet protest. Emma Larson glanced at the docket again, whispering to herself, this isn't what it seems. He's not who they think. Judge Coleman cleared his throat. I'll make this quick, Mr. Henry. You have 2 minutes to speak before sentencing. James didn't stand or reach for a speech. He lifted his gaze, calm and grounded, and said, "I'll speak when you're ready to listen." The judge scoffed, reaching lazily for his gavel, as if swatting a nuisance. He didn't deem James worth noticing. But in the stillness, the courtroom felt a tremor, the kind that precedes a seismic shift. "Mr. Henry," the judge barked, "are you answering or wasting time?" James blinked slowly, then spoke in a voice so steady it made the walls feel fragile. "That house? It was mine. I helped build the city." The judge chuckled. "Build the city? That's rich." Across the aisle, young journalist Lucas Bennett, fingers poised over his phone, nearly typed, "Old man claims he built city, court laughs." But something in James's voice stopped him. It wasn't a boast, it was memory. James continued, "I held a pencil before I held a book. I built walls to shelter the broken, rooms to hold the grieving, spaces that caught people's last breaths with dignity." His voice stayed soft, but each word landed like stone. "I built places to heal. Now I sit before walls that judge." The courtroom didn't gasp, it breathed slower. Emma Larson blinked rapidly, the memory surfacing. Lucas Bennett lowered his phone. Judge Coleman tapped the file nervously. "So what?" "Your past excuse is trespassing." James looked back, not with anger, but with deep weariness. "No, sir. I'm saying the law has a memory problem." The words hung heavy, heavier than any gavel. Coleman grumbled about sentimentality, banging his gavel without flourish. 30 days in county jail." James didn't flinch. He checked his worn leather watch, then said, "May I make one call?" The judge sneered. "To who?" "Your old pals." James said nothing. Procedure allowed the call. A bailiff handed him a phone. James didn't fumble or scroll. He dialed from memory, spoke 3 words, "It's time now." He returned the phone, calm as ever. No one knew what he'd unleashed. Then outside, click, 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 the sharp rhythm of heels on marble, steady, unyielding. The courtroom doors opened with quiet authority. In walked a woman, poised and resolute, in a simple black suit, no flash, no apology. Her name was Eleanor Henry, James Henry's daughter. She moved with a presence that needed no permission. No one stopped her, not the bailiff, not the judge. She placed a hand on her father's shoulder, no words needed. From her jacket, she drew a slim leather folder and laid it on the defense table with calm certainty. Inside were documents, property agreements, city commendations, architectural certifications, signed, notarized, sealed. Each page declared the truth. James Henry hadn't trespassed. He'd come home. Judge Coleman's mouth opened, but no sound came at first. Eleanor spoke. "My father wasn't asking for favors or pity. He was asking to sit on the porch he built." Every word stripped away a layer of ignorance. When the judge finally croaked, "Motion granted," it wasn't mercy, it was surrender. The courtroom didn't cheer or clap, it exhaled, as if breathing anew. James Henry stood slowly, lifted his felt hat, and placed it firmly on his head. He walked out, not in triumph, but in truth. At the door, he paused, turned slightly, and said, "Start listening. Start seeing." No bitterness, just a reminder from a man whose life was too vast for any courtroom to contain. James returned to his porch, now rightfully his, the city's records corrected. Eleanor's documents sparked a review of Springfield's property seizures, exposing decades of unjust condemnations. Judge Coleman faced scrutiny, his docket audited for bias. Lucas Bennett's article, "The Man Who Built a City," went viral, not for drama, but for its quiet call to see the unseen. James Henry resumed his life, tending his porch, his legacy restored, proving justice arrives not with thunder, but in worn boots, carrying memory and unyielding dignity.